Hey guys, I'm Chris Buck, and a very warm welcome to Friday Fretworks. On this week's video, I'm going to be attempting to do something a little bit different, and that is trying to nail Brian May's solo tone from Bohemian Rhapsody. Now, Bohemian Rhapsody, I would argue, is one of the most kind of instantly recognisable tracks ever written, and obviously with the film having come out kind of last year, and all the kind of noise and hubbub surrounding that, it's just inspired me to go back to actually listen to the track in isolation and try and assess it as a kind of standalone bit of music and not the sort of cultural phenomenon that Bohemian Rhapsody is. And a couple of things, aside from the epicness and the kind of writing and the grandeur, everything about it, one thing that really kind of struck me that I guess prior had kind of flown under the radar a little bit is how exquisite Brian May's solo is. It sounds daft given it is kind of one of the most kind of iconic guitar solos ever written, I guess. But a couple of kind of key elements that really kind of flown under the radar for me, at least, you know, in kind of regard to Brian's playing. First and foremost, his vibrato. Trying to replicate that in this video has been a real task. His vibrato is just absolutely sublime and just really beautifully matches the kind of feel of the track. And as I said, the epicness and the grandeur. But more importantly for us kind of guitar nerds, I guess, his guitar tone is pretty unique in kind of multiple respects, kind of across the board. Obviously, Red Special and the story of that guitar, of how he built it with his father, being pretty well documented. But specifically, what pickup positions he was using on this track, what gear he was using, what amps, what pedals, etc., where it was recorded. All these things, in my opinion, played a kind of pretty large role in the kind of unique tone of that solo. So today I've got a good friend's Red Special, Burns kind of signature Brian May guitar. I've got my sixpence at the ready. We're going to set about, as I said, the best of mine and guitar rig's abilities, trying to recreate that tone. Just take it away. So, first thing definitely worth mentioning is going to be the guitar. As I mentioned, it's a Brian May signature, a Burns Brian May signature, dating from 2003, according to the back of the headstock. And as much as I guess it's important to try and kind of look the part when trying to replicate someone's tone, the main factor this guitar has in really nailing that Bohemian Rhapsody tone is the in and out of phase positions on the pickups. It's a relatively kind of unique system to this guitar, in that you can turn each pickup on and off individually and then have kind of variations of whether they're in and out of phase. So the way it works, we're going to be using the top two pickups, so the neck and the middle. So we're going to flick those on, and importantly then we're going to flick them out of phase. It doesn't matter which one is out of phase, there's a redundancy there, as Brian points out in the rig rundown interview, but as long as one of them is out of phase, you kind of instantly you're getting in that kind of ballpark. So hopefully this will show you what I mean. So if we flick both pickups on, so that's both pickups together in phase. Now if you flick them out of phase, straight away you're getting that kind of slightly more nasally kind of quality that you associate with Brian May solos. So let's move over to the MacBook and see what's happening. Now we're going to move straight to guitar rig. I'm going to come back to the EQ I've done on the overall channel a little bit later on because that's very important. But if we open up guitar rig, no kind of great surprises, to be honest. I've kept it relatively straightforward in accordance with what we know Brian uses, and that is obviously their AC30 emulation running into the match cabinet with a treble booster. We also have a gain booster up top, but to be honest, that's not integral in this. It's kind of debatable as to whether it sounds better on or off. I'm going to turn it on just because I think it sounds slightly better with a little bit more gain, or slightly more accurate, should we say. But the AC30 set pretty much dimed on the normal channel, out of phase on the guitar, sounds like this. As you can see, it's very clean. As soon as you turn the treble booster on, we're really getting into that kind of more Brian May territory. So, hopefully you could see straight away it's kind of getting you into that ballpark. A bit of an unusual one that I've done here is the Electric Lady Flanger, and the reason I've done this, again, it's set very, very subtly. You can see the dry-wet mix. The dry is on 75, 76, something like that. So it's set very kind of subtly. But the reason I've done this is on an interview I watched with Brian. He said he was pretty sure that they'd done some extra kind of phasing aside from the out of phase positions on the pickups, just to kind of really, you know, kind of exacerbate was the word I'm going to use, but that's probably not the right word. Exaggerate, should we say, the kind of out of phasiness. So that is there, kind of, click in, and I did use it, but it's kind of negligible as to whether it makes any difference, to be honest. But with it on, or with it off, let's turn the treble booster back on, and then with it on, gives it a very slightly more kind of nasal quality, I guess, that, again, you associate with the solo. In terms of reverb, I'll tell you what, let's also flick the gain booster on, and you'll see what kind of difference that makes. Very subtle, but does kind of give it a little bit of an extra kick. Moving on to the reverb. Now, the reason I've set this to a plate reverb, I'm kind of guessing as to what reverb Brian would have been using, to be honest. Listening to the original master recordings, it's not all that clear. I've set it to a Silver L, whatever that is, plate setting on the vintage Verb plugin here. Reason being, I know this was recorded at Rockfield, and having done a fair bit of work at Rockfield, I know they've got some absolutely gorgeous kind of, real plate reverbs. As well as some really kind of cool actual room reverbs, but I think listening back, it's probably slightly more likely to be a plate. I'm also using a little bit of kind of reverb plugin separately over there, but we'll get onto that in a minute. So as soon as we add the reverb in, it sounds a little bit like this. And then with the electric lady, hopefully you agree, I think it just kind of adds that extra sort of 5%. However, the real kind of big drastic change then comes, aside from the reverb, which if we add that in, it just kind of fattens things up and makes it a little bit more kind of studio-esque, I guess. So at present, we have that. If we turn the outboard reverb on, then we have, so it's not particularly drastic, set at 22%, so it's not kind of absolutely dripping wet. However, the kind of real final kind of kicker in this comes in the EQ. Now, as you'll notice already, it's pretty extreme. I've set it actually to the megaphone setting, and didn't kind of really tweak it from there, to be honest, but it kind of helps nail that kind of... Hopefully, you can kind of see that makes a massive difference. It makes it a little bit more noisy. Obviously, you kind of really emphasise that mid-range, but it just kind of plays a massive role in it. Sort of, I keep using the word nasal quality, but it is a kind of nasalness, for want of a better phrase. And the last thing absolutely worth mentioning is this. Sixpence. Honestly, I was kind of a little bit skeptical as to whether this would make a difference, to be honest, but it absolutely does. It kind of emphasises those sort of kind of harmonic qualities, I guess, that sort of slightly pinched sort of sound. Just kind of all, hopefully you'll agree, it's relatively close to the original. I'll do a little bit of a comparison now at the back end of this video, kind of flip-flopping back and forth between the two, but hopefully you'll agree it's kind of getting you into that ballpark. So there we go. So there you have it. in my humble opinion, I got relatively close. It was always going to be a kind of impossible task, I guess, to entirely match the kind of tone of that recording. So many kind of variable factors that I don't have access to. The board at Rockfield, the kind of microphones they were using, obviously, as much as this amp simulation does get very close, there is no substitute ultimately for a stack of AC30s being driven to their kind of max. A lot of kind of variable elements in that really kind of impact the overall tone of the solo. Ultimately as well, obviously with the kind of solo having been taken from the masters, this kind of variables in how well that was done and how well that's affected the tone of the solo. So there's a couple of things that were always going to be kind of a little bit of an impossibility to try and kind of really replicate. But as I said, hopefully, if nothing else, this will give you a little bit of an idea in what it kind of took to achieve that tone. And hopefully, if it comes in handy for you in any way, shape or form, in kind of replicating that in the future or taking that and putting it in your own context, hopefully it'll kind of do some good. So, as ever, this has been Friday Fretworks. I've been Chris Black. Please do like this video if you haven't already, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos every week. And I shall see you next week for another Friday Fretworks. Cheers, guys. Take care.